The IB results were declared last night. How do they compare with the results from last year? How do they compare with the IGCSE, ICSE, ISC, CBSE, any of the national curriculum results that are yet to be declared? Let's talk about it. Well, to start with, last year around this time, the IB received a lot of flack. There were a lot of hate mails, there were a lot of hate comments, even on the IB website. A lot of people who expressed their concern over how these results were predicted. And one reason I feel why there was that kind of a reaction was because of this word called historical data. So while IB had asked for all the predicted scores, the scores of the IAs, the EEs, TOK, they also used something called a historical data to be able to predict and assign grades. What the historical data is something like this. They looked at the trend of a certain school, what their grades were previously, hashtag some model to be able to project and predict scores of those students of May 2020. Was that a good technique? Well, it's debatable. Some people thought it was a great technique, some people differed. And but what about new IB schools, schools that had just started? It was their very first batch, and so they did not have enough data that could be used to make a proper prediction. So although it was a great suggestion, that method might have been great if you had enough data for all schools across the country, the world. It did not work well with schools that had just started off. The first couple of years, they're still getting used to that system, right? So with just those 2 years of data, many schools probably didn't get the results that they thought that they deserved. However, this year, I think they just knocked off that idea of the historical data. They at least heard the pleas of all the schools. They sat down, probably rehashed another formula, and they decided to do away with this idea of historical data. And not just that, even on their website, they've been constantly posting and reassuring students, teachers, schools about the situation and making sure that idea was communicated. There were two options given to schools. They could either take the exam route, that means they could go ahead and take the exams, or wherever the exams could not be hosted, they allowed for the system. I think majority of the schools, there's some data given here. It said something like the number of candidates for May 2020 was a little over 170,000. Out of the 170,000 students, 100,000 over 100,000 students were in the non-exam route, and 65,576 were in the exam route. That means a lot of people still showed trust in this system. Even without taking the exams, the IB would still do a fair job. So despite whatever criticism that they received last year, this year, obviously, they have done something to be more sensitive to students' needs. In many cases, syllabus was reduced because practically it was impossible for schools to host classes the way they would have normally had in a normal classroom situation. So how did the IB go about calculating the grades, and why is it so unique compared to any of the other boards that I mentioned before? My opinion is this: at least there was some work, some component of student work that was assessed or moderated by the IB. So, for example, the internal assessment, normally under normal conditions, if the exams had not been cancelled, the internal assessment would comprise of just 20% of the final grade. Internal assessment is internally assessed by the school and externally moderated. And normally the IB just requires a sample when they go for the moderation. But in this case, in the last 2 years, they've been asking to upload every single IA. So they actually assessed it. Okay. So it probably was assessed here and it was assessed there also. So I think it's just fair to say that some kind of student work, students had done some work and that actually got assessed. So it's not like an exam that gets cancelled and no student work got assessed. You see what I'm saying? In the same way, other student work like extended essay, TOK essay, they were all submitted. So the IB could actually get a sample, a fair idea of what the student is capable about. But an important observation to make is this: all these three components, no one, no student, no teacher can produce any of this or all of this in one sitting, like a 2 hour exam session, as we call it. Each of these, the students worked over a period of time. The IAs are a 1500 word essay that the students must write, a research that they have to do in math or in other subjects. You probably worked on it over 2 months or maybe a month and a half, at least a month, they would have worked on it. So it's an ongoing work that goes on with ongoing feedback. It's not just one draft, so they have to rework if they got something right. And based on the feedback, they probably had to do it again. Same goes with the extended essay, same goes with the TOK essay, where they did not actually produce the work in one seating, not like a 2 hour or a 3 hour exam. as opposed to the conventional exam, which earlier on took or comprised 80% of the grade. You see? So this time, there was a lot of emphasis. In fact, all the emphasis went on work that was done over a period of time. And yes, the IB has also asked for the predicted scores that were sent from schools. That I feel is a little ambiguous because you know what? In most schools, the predicted scores were based out of the mock exam, the prelims, or the CAs, the continuous assessment, any kind of assessment that they had through the year. But the number one complaint many schools had because of the online system was on assessment. Many schools did use exam.net and other techniques, but they still said that it probably was not a good reflection of the scores. So I would not probably rate this as high as any of these. In my opinion, therefore, a large part of the grades were based on what the students did over a period of time and not just one exam, like a 2 hour exam or a 3 hour exam. Now, why is that different or unique from the other boards and the other curriculum? Same reason. You see, for the ICSE, the CBSE, the HSE, any other exams that were cancelled, colleges and schools were asked to send some kind of predicted scores. But given that teachers and schools felt the pressure of conducting an online exam, in most of the national curriculum, there are class sizes of at least 50 or 60 students, sometimes even more. How is it even practically possible to conduct an online exam for a class size of 60? Tell me, there will be some issues. So it is just fair to say that if you're going to try and have an exam, an online exam, the students are writing on paper and the teacher is monitoring or proctoring for those 2 hours via the online medium, maybe it wasn't a great indicator. And therefore, many teachers rightly felt that it wasn't a good measure. And keeping that in mind, if that's the only thing that you're going to consider while predicting those scores for an ICSE, CBSE, or HSE, then I don't think it's a good reflection. Now, this is just my opinion. You may differ. I want to know your comments. What are your thoughts about the upcoming results for the IGCSE, the ISC, the ICSE, the CBC results? How reliable are the methods used to predict those scores? Let me know